My teeth. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 9 of the Justin and
Caitlin show.
Hey,
Hey.
I look like I'm doing really weird movements with my mouth. It's because I've been eating these breakfast biscuits and they're all stuck in my teeth.
He literally stuck a whole one in his mouth like 20 seconds before we went live. And 2 seconds ago was over there trying to
I like to imitate camels in my free time, but
You do. Especially with the whole breakfast biscuit. Oh my god.
All right. So welcome everybody to episode 9 titled Why Therapy? Our show is taking a new spin. We're not going to be going through any books, at least like what we did with Wayne Dyer's book there. We're really taking this spin on how we do therapy, why we do the therapy we do, and what the heck was our road in therapy? Because we both believe in order to be a good therapist, you got to do your own work. Not that either of us have arrived by any means.
Nope.
But in order to really set yourself up for, good standing in this profession, you got to do your own work.
You can't take someone where you haven't gone.
Yeah.
It's like, I use Mount Everest as an example. It's like, I would not want to go climb Mount Everest with someone who has never climbed it before.
Oh, come on, we could wing it. Just kidding, I wouldn't either.
I would prefer for whoever I'm going with not to just have read a textbook on how to climb Mount Everest and to have seen pictures, but to have preferably already climbed it so they know where the pitfalls are, they know where the harder parts are, they know where the struggle is going to be. And I know each of that is also individualized, but they've at least climbed it before.
Yeah.
And so it's picking someone, and again, different therapists have worked through different amounts in their story. None of us have worked through our whole story. Again, none of us have arrived. But it's very important to find someone when you're going into therapy who's at least started that journey and who's at least climbed to a point in Mount Everest who can kind of come back down and climb with you on this.
Right on. So Caitlin, why therapy? Why would someone want to come? Why do people come?
Yeah.
Why therapy?
I mean, what I've found, and this is what we're really going to get into tonight, I have found that people usually come to therapy when their whole life is on fire and everything is crumbling. Not necessarily for maintaining physical health or mental health, not just because they want to come in and, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. It would be completely natural to want to come in to kind of process all the changes that have been thrown on someone within the past 3 months. None of us have any control over it. That sends our anxiety it skyrockets our anxiety, it sends our panic into a mountaintop because we don't know what's going to happen. And a lot of our financial resources are slim to none right now. And so having that support and having that person to talk to kind of process all this stuff with and really talk through it is instrumental. Unfortunately, though, I find that the majority of people that I've talked to, and even for myself as well, therapy is more of this last resort. Like, I don't want to be considered insane. I don't want to be considered something being wrong with me mentally. So I don't enter into therapy until my whole world's falling apart and then things are finally bad enough. But it's how our world views it. It's also the stigma that's there.
Yeah. And even the social justice issues going on right now.
Yeah.
No matter where you fall on the fence there's a lot of just, quite honestly, just anger and stuff that's been passed down generationally that now is starting to bubble up to the surface, which I think is a good thing. But there's a lot to process there.
There is.
And I think even if your world was hunky-dory and everything was cool, the pandemic and the social justice issues going on would be enough to bring in and want to communicate and share and bounce off with somebody. So let's jump into some misconceptions. I think there's a lot of things people do or think about therapy, and they're like, man, I don't want to go in that therapy. That's for they're all quacks. They dress weird. They're a bunch of weirdos, and whatever. The one I hear a lot from a lot of the fellas is this idea of, well, I can figure it out on my own. Now, I do think that's some of like the macho man thing coming out, but not the wrestler. But trying really hard not to do impersonation. But
go for it. We support that.
Oh yeah.
There it is. There it is.
But it's this idea. I could figure it out on my own. Why would I want to come to Caitlin and pay you or Justin or whoever?
Yeah.
And for me, I like to give the metaphor of, look, man, you know, I use that metaphor of a lake with some trees around it. You know, you can do some fishing. There's different little coves and nooks. It's like, look, man, you've been rowing your boat out to the same spot every day for the last, 28 years, however old they are. What I'm trying to help you do is to go, hey, dude, why don't we go row over this way and check out that cove and look at this lake from a new perspective?
Yep.
And a lot of times people don't realize how much just rowing your boat 50 yards changes the perspective of literally everything. And it's, to be honest, you can't see what you can't see. You've got blinders on for a reason. And that's not a diss on you. It's just you truthfully can't sit down, read a bunch of psychology books, and figure this out yourself. What was another misconception? Oh, I made a meme about this. I think I put it up on Monday with The Rock. That little girl meme. And it's this whole idea that counselors are going to fix you. Oh, they're going to do everything for you, give you a bunch of homework, and we're going to lockstep things through. And also thinking that therapy is linear. I'm going to go from A to B to C to D. Now it's A to J, back to B to K to Z, back to X.
And a little zigzag in between.
yeah. End up back at A, wondering how we got here, but yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I think this whole idea that it's got to be done with a chair and a couch,
or that you have to be in crisis in order to go, or that again, I'm going to talk for an hour straight. And they're going to tell me how to fix this problem. One, therapy does not always have to be talking. I know all three of us at Phoenix, and we'll get into this a little bit later, do therapy a little bit differently. But then also, we don't have the answers. And I think that's hard to sit with sometimes. But we don't have the answers for your life. And that I would never assume to understand exactly where you're coming from because I haven't lived through what you've been through. So for me to tell you how you should live your life, I've never gone through the trauma that you have. I've never had to deal with the relationships that you've had to deal with. I've never had to deal with the injustices that you've had to deal with in different senses. So then who am I to tell you how you should and should not live your life? Therapy, the power of it is a lot of times having that person to actually finally listen to you and for you to be heard. Once a week at least, when everyone else throughout your life, when you start talking, it's like they're listening, ready to respond to you. And the power sometimes from therapy just comes from being with someone who's willing to just sit with you and listen to what you've been through and allow you to tell them what it's been like for you. What has your story been like? And how come you're dealing with the stuff that you're dealing with today? And to finally feel heard and to realize that your voice does have value.
Yeah. Kind of trying to think of some other misconceptions, I think the big one is a societal one, like you touched on already. And it's the whole that you gotta be, only the really bad people go to therapy.
Or there's a problem with you if you go to therapy.
Yeah. And my problem is, or not a problem, my issue with that is, look, man, why is it that it's cool to go to the gym? I mean, right now it's a little scary with COVID, but it's cool to normally go to the gym. It's cool for me to get a yearly checkup at the doctor at the least. It's cool for me to go to the chiropractor once a week or, whatever.
Massage therapist.
It's cool for me to get a massage. It's cool for me to get a life coach. It's cool for education. It's cool for me to do all that. It's cool for me to, meal prep or try and eat better. But the idea of getting your noggin in order, it's like, oh no, we don't
go there.
Yeah, we don't go there. But it's really like thinking, man, if we get our thinking and our thoughts, behaviors, and actions in order, doesn't that help all the other things? Maybe your posture's off because of the stress and the way you're thinking has you kind of contorted. So then maybe you wouldn't need the chiropractor as much. I don't know. I mean, I'm literally going off the top of my head, but
no, it's amazing though when people start talking about their stories and you hear about different things they've dealt with, and then you start looking at where they hold their tension and their pain. Like for me, mine was in my stomach. Like, you remember this in the beginning of grad school, I would have intense, like after a long day at work, my stomach would hurt so badly, be like sharp shooting pains every single day. And there was never, like, the doctors had no idea. They checked out all my organs. They're like, you look fine. But it was anxiety. It was stress. And once I finally learned how to deal with that, the pain's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my stomach never hurts. The only time it starts acting up is when I'm very anxious. But now it's a sign that something is wrong versus being just a consistent pain that I deal with. And therapy actually helped me realize that. And now I don't live in pain. Great.
Yeah. We'll probably get into that in a few weeks.
Yep.
But somatic pain is definitely was a big part of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
So look, what is therapy, man? At the end of the day, what is Phoenix Counseling style? You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of styles of therapy. For those of you listening, whether you come see us or not, it's cool. Our goal here is just to promote mental health.
Yep.
If you want to be a client of ours, awesome. If you end up finding someone else, awesome. It's cool. Look, there's a lot of styles of therapy. We're not going to go through every one because we'd be here until midnight.
We don't
But
have
look,
that.
if you're someone who's like, you know, you got a job, you know, a lot of times they'll have EAP. You get 3, 4, 5 sessions with a counselor type person.
Yep.
And then maybe they can refer you out if it's something more serious. But EAP is a type of therapy. Solution-focused therapy is literally exactly what it sounds like. It's like bang, bang. You don't really get any depth. It's here's my issue. How do we rectify it? Boom, boom,
Yep.
boom. It's a very fast-moving therapy. You have cognitive behavior therapy. Which
Focuses on your thoughts and how they're influencing your behaviors. Literally what it sounds like.
Correct. You know, you have what we do, which is relational therapy, psychodynamic therapy, object relations therapy. They're all in the same family, basically the same thing. Dealing with relationships. How do relationships influence your world? How do you relate to things in your environment? And that doesn't always have to be people. It could be things systemic, like a job, literally a family system, a job system, family system. And so that kind of there's things like DBT.
Which I've had training in that. It's great, especially for changing when a behavior is the big problem and you only have a limited amount of time. So like part of my student internship, I worked at an eating disorder residential center. So we did a lot of DBT therapy because it's dialectical behavioral therapy. So you're teaching people that things aren't good or bad. Two truths can be at the same time.
Yeah,
it's very hard, especially when they're teens, to understand that. But once you can grasp that, even as an adult, that two things can be true at the same time, and how do you work with that? And then how do you change the behavior? That is really, really great, again, when the behavior is the focus. Phenomenal.
Yep. Emotion-focused therapy, again, that's pretty self-explanatory. You know, yeah, it's very emotions-focused. Here's what I would suggest. If you're looking at therapy, again, you don't need to choose this. Would we like you to? Sure, but by all means, you don't have to.
Yeah.
I would ask you to look up some of these types of therapy. You know, what I say, solution focus, relational therapy, CBT, DBT, emotion focused. Look up some of these things so you see like, wow, maybe I would function best in this style of therapy. And then what you can do is go on something like Psychology Today, Therapy Den. There's numerous sites you can look up and say, and you can literally type in and use a filter of therapists that use, you know, relational theory, and then it'll populate that. And that can be very helpful in choosing a therapist. Sometimes we think like we got to go look, what does Justin look like? You know, what is Caitlin? Is that helpful? Yes. You know, you want to be able to connect to a person, but also do you want to connect to how they move along? You know, and but I think I missed the whole first part of like what is therapy. So can you touch on that while I'm holding back, coughing?
I mean, this probably also comes from my way that I view people and the way that I view therapy is that it's forming that safe relationship. It's forming, ideally, when you go into therapy, you are forming a safe, secure environment that's formed over time where you can actually trust that. But ideally, it is having the safe, secure environment where you are actually able to be yourself. Talk about what has brought you in, what's actually going on in your present life, how did you get there, and where do you want to go from there? And different therapists will focus on different parts. I know for us, we haven't really we didn't plan this. We all kind of just do therapy similar, but also differently. But all of us focus on why the person's coming into therapy. But there's also this focus on, okay, how come that problem's even there? Again, one of our professors always used to tell us, he's like, these problems, like why we do the things we do, did not come in the past week. Usually they've been there for years. We have relationships that end the exact same way. We have work that ends the exact same way. We have patterns. And so how did those patterns develop? How are they leading into the problem that's there today? And then where do you want to go from there? What type of life do you want to live? What type of life is going to bring you fulfillment? And how can we help you get there?
Yeah.
But I think part of the power of therapy is forming that safe relationship, because many people, when they come in, that hasn't been something that's been a luxury for them. And sometimes that's not even known, like what is a safe relationship? What is it like to have someone listen to you? What is it like to have someone not talk over you? What is it like to have someone care about what you have to say?
Yeah. And to be honest, what is therapy? Therapy doesn't have to look the traditional Sigmund Freud, you lay on a couch, free associate, talk out loud. He throws a bunch of theories at you and we see what happens. It can be experiential. You know, Caitlin includes dance and movement. Andrea incorporates yoga and walk type things. Obviously, right now, some of that's a little hard because it's 6,000 degrees outside.
Yes.
And for me, I like including movement of a fitness variety. You know, with some of my teens, we play basketball, throw a football around, especially with my male teen clients.
Yep.
And so it doesn't need to look a certain way. I've had people bring in their instruments, a guitar. People draw. I've had people bring in their Legos because they like to build things out to show you.
We've used slime.
Yeah.
That was a fun session.
Play therapy is another one I forgot earlier. You know, using a sandbox. Play therapy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we use it. We use different toys. We use play therapy. You can use slime. We've used Play-Doh. I've had clients finger paint before. I've also had clients, if we had to get outside, we've done equine therapy by partnering with different places. And, I mean, there was one client, we even threw rocks at the beginning of the session because that's all we had access to. It was a big field. Don't worry. There was no buildings nearby. It was acres upon acres. But we needed.
Sure there was. It was a corporate building.
we needed to write some things down, and we needed to throw them to get out some frustration that was building up in his body. And that's what we did. And then we played football after.
There you go.
And it was effective. So.
I think we talked about this. Like our style overall. Again, we all do this a little different. Everybody's got their own flavor because you got to be yourself.
Yep.
It's very relationally based, and it's very much, you know, asking questions of what is your family of origin like, which is really a fancy-ish way of saying, what was it like when you grew up in your home, mom, dad, brother? What did grandma, grandpa, was it aunt, uncle that raised you?
Yeah.
Did you have multiple siblings? What was your relationships there? You know, how about dating, sex? People don't like talking about that. I talk about that a lot, especially in the beginning. Yep. Sex tells you a lot. It's a relational thing.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's a one-night stand, there's still a brief relational transaction going on there. Yep. And, you know, we'll get into this the next bunch of weeks, and that leads into your attachment style, which I use the old school way, and it's easier. It's the whole secure, ambivalent, avoidant, or disorganized, and working through which attachment style are you in, because your attachment style, and we're not going to get into this all tonight, but it'll start next week. Your attachment style permeates into just about everything you do because it literally becomes part of your DNA by age 3.
Yep.
Because it becomes a part of the superhighway in your mind.
Yep.
And then also literally a part of your DNA of how you function and engage. So it impacts everything. And so our theory and our thought process is if we can help you relate better to yourself and others, it will literally play out into bettering every part of your life because everything we do is a relationship.
Yep.
So Miguel's got a question. Miguel took a few weeks off, but he's back in action, folks.
Woo!
Here he is.
Hi, Miguel.
He's coming back here. He goes, would you say that different approaches are like different tools? Or would you say that there's a better approach than the others? It seems to me that CBT makes sense at some level and can be useful, even if it's not as holistic.
You want to jump on that one first? Do you want me to?
I don't care. I'll go.
Go for it.
I would say, classic. It depends. No, I'm kidding.
That's not what he's looking for.
I know that's like the most generic counselor response of all time. Would I say their different approaches are like different tools? In some ways, yes. I would probably be very biased in saying, are there better approaches? Yes, but even though as much as I want to rib on CBT that you brought that up, if CBT is used the way it was originally set up to work, not the way, to be quite frank, a lot of therapists use it today,
yeah,
CBT can be very deep and can take you into a lot of the same processes. I don't know, but to be fair, if you asked me this 8 months ago, I would have said, yeah, there's a relational therapy is a much better approach. But as I've kind of rounded some different corners now, I would say it's a matter of how much work your therapist has done.
There we go. Yep.
Because then that allows them to enter into their theory more authentically and take you much deeper. So to me, it doesn't matter if they're EFT, emotion focused therapy, if they're DBT. I always forget what that's called. I always want to say
behavioral therapy.
Yeah, I always want to say diabolical, which I know is not right.
That works though.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily what's better or worse. It's what's going to connect with you. And is your therapist really using that because that's part of their authentic self? Or are they just reading from a bunch of CBT books and winging it when you walk in the door? Like, if you're a therapist and if you're a client and you walk in, your therapist is giving you worksheets all the time, find somewhere else to go. That's very basic and very surface level work. I really ripped apart CBT in my last semester in school, and I've since come around to realize it has a lot of value, especially in building out your new story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's really a matter of what your therapist connects to as to how they operate and think. And then do you operate and think in a similar way?
And if they walk through parts of their story too, everyone heals in different ways, and we heal different parts of our story in different ways. I can use CBT a lot, like if we're using anxiety. CBT is great when talking about anxious thoughts and how does it impact behavior. Great, definitely can use that. But if my body's also being affected by the anxiety, I also need to be able to go there. So like what we were talking about with Mount Everest earlier, depending on how much your therapist has actually worked through their own story, it's how far they'll actually be able to take you in your level of healing. So if they've just worked on thoughts and that's it, then that's all they're really going to be able to work with you on. But if they've done thoughts, they've done behavior, they've done emotions, they've done body work, they've done attachment, they've done relational, and they've worked through parts of those all in their own story, you have a therapist now that has a lot of different tools that they can jump to depending on where you're at. Because again, the session's not about us. The session's about whoever walks in that door. And so we need to be able to work with wherever the client is at. Not where we think they should be or what techniques we think we should use, but what techniques work best for them. And like Andrea always says, if you only have a hammer, every problem's going to look at the nail. Because that's all you have. If you have a toolbox, then you can look at what's actually there and you can see what will work most effectively. If I have a client who comes in and their posture's hunched over, I am not going to start talking about what thoughts are running through their head. We'll get there at some point, but we're first going to practice some deep breathing and doing some grounding to get them present and actually work on getting their shoulders lifted and what does that actually feel like. and talk about what emotions are typically held in the upper back and shoulders and what that means for them. And then we go into thoughts. But it's not just focusing on one facet of it.
Yeah. Here you were thinking we wouldn't have enough to get 30 minutes today.
Hey.
That's my favorite question of the night.
Oh, yeah. This one's fun.
Our adventure into therapy.
Ooh.
What did we think going in? How did we think it was going to work? Why don't you go first?
Since mine shocked you, apparently. So my adventure into therapy was a hot mess. Pretty much lots of really crappy things happened throughout, especially late teens, early adulthood. So when I first entered into therapy, I tried it twice. The first therapist looked at me like he had no idea what to do. Like I literally got the blank stare. And the second, like he had no idea what to do with the trauma at all. The second one, I had suicidal ideation and definitely some suicide attempts during that time. And so I explained to the second therapist that, hey, I removed like the pill bottles, like I don't have anything like that in my house. And he's like, oh, so you're good. Why are you here? I was like, well, the crisis is averted, but I am not doing okay.
The thing that caused the crisis is still
It's
around.
still there. So I never went back. But it was big time. I never felt like they knew what to do. And I was trying to find help. I was trying to reach out. And it felt like no one could actually handle hearing my story and the things that had happened. It felt like it was too much. So I quit going. And then about 3 or 4 years later, it got to the point that things really, really were not going well. And my family had a conversation with me. They're like, we're really worried. And at this point, it's either we think you need to get Baker acted or we're going to sign you up for therapy next week. Those are really your options. So I didn't want to go through Baker acting. So I went to therapy. Turns out I had met this woman back in my elementary school. She used to do fundraising and marketing for our elementary school. So I already knew her and I loved her from back then. So to see her sitting in front of me, I was like, oh, maybe.
Cool.
But I was very cynical. I thought therapy was complete BS. I thought therapists were crazy. I did not believe it was going to help me in the slightest. I was literally one of the mandated clients that all the therapists now dread seeing when they show up because they know the person does not want to be there. And I remember one of the first questions I asked her was, why do you think you can help me? Like, why do you actually think you can handle my story? Because I've tried this and no one can. And so she talked to me more about her own life and what, not details on like little things, but talked to me how she's worked through her own story and her presence and her authenticity and her vulnerability. I was like, okay, you can go there. You can actually sit with me. And turns out she could. And it was an amazing experience. And from that I finally looked at her one day and I was like, I want to do this. This is my calling. And I know that it is. I want to help bring healing to people because I've seen how this has drastically changed my entire life. From where, again, suicidal, being threatened with Baker acted, to actually being able to work with many, many different people throughout the week and living a much healthier life now and actually have healthy relationships and literally have a healthy life and never thinking that would ever be something in the cards for me, ever.
Yeah.
So that's a short version of how I started therapy.
Yeah. I had a few crappy counselors when I was a kid, and that really pissed me off because I realized later in life, had I gotten the help I needed, my life would have been a lot different. Probably wouldn't have taken so many off ramps. But yeah, I got, I don't know, self-Baker acted. I walked in myself, told him I'm suicidal. I have no idea what the heck to do with myself. Got locked away at South Sim Behavior Ward for 4.5 days, and that's a wild experience if you've ever had that and stayed that long. Left there, had a psychiatrist lady prescribe me basically about 3,000 different medications, and then none of them worked. I had all kinds of side effects, and then I was seeing a counselor guy who really didn't do nothing. And so I stopped. I went cold turkey on all the medications, which don't do that, by the way. Definitely follow a process of breaking away from your medications.
Yes,
that was a rough couple weeks. And I eventually just got to this place. It took me another 1.5 years. I went through what I call the desert. And I feel like God really isolated me on purpose. And it was my journey of really figuring out, is this what I want? And ultimately landed with my buddy now, Pastor Steve. I walked into his office. Any of you who really know me, when I'm on a mission, you know it. I'm in my bulldozer. The diesel stack is, and we're ready to rock and roll. And I was ready to go. I had just gotten out of another suicidal time. I got out of a rough relationship. I could never get a relationship to work. Never felt comfortable. Felt like there was fire inside of me. I had like constant anxiety, throwing up, and diarrhea, and never being able to calm down and sleep. And I'm like, this just is not. This don't make no sense. Walked into Pastor Steve's office. I was like, here's what I think's wrong with me. I don't know what we need to do, but I think you're going to help me do it. He goes, well, we'll see what we can do. And he leaned back in his chair, and I wanted to punch him in his face, but I didn't. And for 8 months, he and I met. And then we got to a certain point, I realized I needed to switch gears and see, a licensed counselor. And I did that for 2 years. And man, I just was sold out. I realized for me, my whole world was on fire. And my only direction I could go was forward across a drawbridge. So I know you went in cynical. I went in with nothing to lose. I really didn't give a crap what we had to do. I told all my counselors, at Steve and my other one, and I said, look, I don't give a rat's behind. What I need to do, I'm going to do it. And they tried telling me multiple times to slow down and pace myself, but I would lie to them, to be honest. And I said, sure, yeah, I'll do it. But I didn't care, and I'm not saying my strategy was good. Or the way to do it. I actually wouldn't recommend doing what I did. But I was just where I was at the time. I literally did not give a rip what I had to do to change. I did not want to live the life that I had the last 30 years or whatever. 30, whatever it was at 32. I don't know. And I was just sold out to the process day and night. Was it obsessive? Maybe. I don't know. But I didn't care. I wanted to change. I was done living the life I had lived. I said, there's got to be something bigger and better to this. One of my big misconceptions and thoughts going in was that I just had to get over that one hump, and then I was smooth sailing, not realizing there was 6,000 other humps to come. And I feel like I always had this thought of like, if I could just get to that one spot, I can finally. And then it's like you get to that spot. And you're like, oh dear Lord.
You're like, oh, there's more.
There goes further, and then you get new realizations, and then you got to almost kind of recircle back around the same mountain because now you have a new perspective.
Peeling back an onion. You go to a deeper level.
Oh dear Lord! And then I don't know what I think going in. I just didn't care. I really could care less what homework they gave me. I didn't care what they told me I had to do. If they told me I had to walk on my hands for the next month and that would cure my attachment issues, I would have done it.
Yeah.
I would have had sore wrists, but I didn't care. I would have done it. And I thought when my counselor told me to get a teddy bear to be my inner child, that she was insane. And I was like, whatever. But I found myself on Amazon that night ordering a bear. But yeah, I don't know. My life was also set up, and this is a big point too. My life was set up in a way to sell out because you do get the points in therapy when you hit the deep work. You kind of hit what I call the zombie mode, where you're like, your brain is like off. You're on autopilot, and it literally is overdone.
Yep.
I did that a lot. But my life was also set up in a way that I could do that. Had I been working like normal full-time stuff and whatever, probably would not have been able to because I would have been fired for not being, keeping up. Or even if I had kids, I don't have kids. Andrea and I don't have kids. Thank God. Just kidding. But I'm just kidding, everybody.
And we are nearing the end of our time for tonight.
But look, next week we are going to be talking and starting our next little block called attachment. We're going to spend the next 4 weeks walking through attachment, what plays into that, what is attachment, and how does it influence our life. So, Thank you for joining us for episode 9 of the Justin and
Caitlin Show.
Boom!
To 10.
Hey, that'll be cool. We need to celebrate next week.
We'll
see you all next week. Send us a virtual cake. See ya.
Yeah.